Is there a problem with traditions being watered down within the Puerto Rican culture?
Sort of, yeah, because, well, look, I'll say this. Most Puerto Ricans actually don't know their culture and history. This, what I'm saying right now, is news, would be news to a lot of Puerto Ricans. This is why I'm talking and saying, especially the name Pedro Albizu Campos.
Lucky Boys Podcast.
I grew up with Puerto Ricans.
Nice.
And Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, blacks, Italians, right? And other Asians. But out of what everyone I hung out with, all the cultures, the Puerto Ricans always had the most visible pride outward, right? Especially during Puerto Rican Day Parade. I mean, they would put their flags on the cars, as a shirt, remember I don't know if they still do it, but the beaded necklaces. Oh, yeah. Every single Puerto Rican I knew had one, and when I went over to their houses, they had one over there, and I was like, man, this is it made me feel like I was so immersed in the culture where it was just like a fun time. It was always, even at night when I would sleep over my Puerto Rican friend's house, like it would just be like a party, the dancing, the everyone would come over, the music. It was just so alive. Yeah. I mean, is that part of the reason that the pride is there? I mean, where does it stem from?
There was a time in American history where it was illegal for Puerto Ricans to own a Puerto Rican flag. If you got caught with a Puerto Rican flag, you were going to jail for 10 years.
So 1900s?
1940, 1950s. I forget the exact dates and times right now, but it was for a substantial amount of time, and they made it illegal for you to have anything like that. And so imagine being told you can't even have your flag. Something as simple as that. But that speaks to the level of colonization that was happening in Puerto Rico at the time. You understand? There was a very deep indoctrination, an agenda to indoctrinate the people of Puerto Rico, and that was one of the very what's the word I want to use? That was one of the many ways they tried to put us down,
divide,
and almost like remove us from our culture, because there's many other things. You understand that there's a lot of history between America and Puerto Rico that people just don't know. You understand? And it's I'm working on a couple of things, to bring these things to light, because they're not very pretty, and so I understand why they're under the rug, because they're not pretty. To give you another example for the listeners watching that want something a little bit more extreme, the first time the American government bombed their own people was in Puerto Rico in 1950. There was a very small attempt for a Puerto Rican revolution, and in the town of Jayuya, they sent the planes to bomb the town because there was a bit of infiltration happening. You know what I mean? This was an organized event for a Puerto Rican revolution moment, but it got stumped. To be honest, America don't play, so they had their FBI informants, they had all the inside scoop. It went very, very south. But again, not to make that the topic of conversation because it's very heavy. But that the pride comes from constantly being stepped on and trying to be removed or ignored. You know what I mean?
They have a sense of pride because now they know that at one time you didn't let us represent our flag and that we can be incarcerated for it.
Right.
So because of that, we're gonna rep every chance we get.
So now
is that part of it? It's just that's just been passed down.
Well, to be honest, it's in our DNA at this point, and but that's also gonna vary from how close the parents are going to hold on to our culture and heritage. You understand?
Is there a problem with traditions being watered down within the Puerto Rican culture?
Sort of, yeah, because, well, look, I'll say this. Most Puerto Ricans actually don't know their culture and history. This, what I'm saying right now, is news, would be news to a lot of Puerto Ricans. This is why I'm talking and saying, especially the name Pedro Albizu Campos. This man, the world needs to know who this is. He was like our Marcus Garvey, our Malcolm X. You understand? Our Dr. Martin Luther King, he had a vision, he had a dream for the independence of Puerto Rico. He was actually the first Latino ever to graduate from Harvard. And he could have been anything he wanted to be. But he dedicated his life to the independence of Puerto Rico. He traveled the world internationally and met with other, countries to get awareness about what was happening in Puerto Rico by America. And so it's a lot, man. The history is deep. You know Domino Sugar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Came out of PR.
Oh.
That was the first sweatshop they had in Puerto Rico. Was Domino Sugar. And people don't even know.
So,
you know what I mean?
so white capitalists went over to Puerto Rico, kind of raided the national, the national product of Puerto Rico. Is that what happened?
Puerto Rico has never had a time period where they governed themselves, unless we go all the way back to when it was dominated by the Taínos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
First it was Spain, and then America literally took us from Spain in 1898. And it wasn't for a very long time until the first Puerto Rican governor was put in place. So there were, a lot of white American, men in the position of power at the time for government in Puerto Rico. So that's why a lot of these things they got away with a lot of making it illegal to have a flag. It was illegal for kids to speak Spanish in schools at one point, which doesn't make any sense.
That's crazy.
How are you supposed to learn anything?
Yeah.
I can go on.
I mean,
and on.
that's actually interesting because oppression, the way they kind of destroy like the culture is to not teach people their culture,
right?
To restrict them from learning where they came from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the African American community.
Colonization, and but look, everything happens for a reason, and you got to just be grateful for the cause that we're given. And a lot of people may look at PR and say, oh, but you guys are born citizens, and we take advantage of American citizenship or things like that, and they really just don't understand the history. Especially the people that go and say, oh, but it's the Puerto Rican government that's corrupt and that's doing that. Do you know who put that government there? What are we talking about? Yeah. You understand? We're not talking about a system that was created by us. You're talking about people that will take a paycheck to do what they're told, to run the agenda as necessary. You understand? And it would take literally millions of Puerto Ricans to line up on highways to remove a governor that's blatantly corrupt. That's what it took. You know what I mean? And so anytime I hear somebody go and, they talk like they know stuff and they're like, oh, but it's the own Puerto Rican people in the government that are corrupt. And I'm just like, how you think they got there?
Yeah.
What do we like? What do you expect? You understand?
I wonder.
But it goes deeper. It goes deeper.
Yeah.
The first Puerto Rican governor was placed there. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, I want to know more about the pride and the lineage. You have people because in Chinese culture, Chinese Americans that were born here in the States, they have their idea of people Chinese immigrants coming here. And is there a divide between Puerto Ricans that were born in America and Puerto Ricans that were born in Puerto Rico? Is there that divide there? Is there a lot of misunderstandings?
Unfortunately, there is. And you have to understand, it was still a part of the oppression that was instilled during the colonization. You understand? We became citizens. Why? Because America was nice to us and they wanted to make us citizens? No. We got citizenship because they needed people to go to war. Who can we send that we don't care about? Let's make them citizens because you needed to be a citizen to be in the military. Made us citizens, sent us to war immediately. You understand? That's where that really stems from. And so, once citizenship came, then, a lot of Puerto Ricans to find a better life, like any other immigrant from anywhere in the world goes to America. We traveled, we came to New York, Florida. Now we could find Puerto Ricans almost anywhere in America, because now so much time has passed where where now this is like a mainland for us, right? This is a mainland and that's the homeland, right? And so it's like we have these two bases. There is a divide, not from all, but like, for example, I'm born and raised here in New York. I rep Puerto Rico. We're talking about Puerto Rico because of how hard I rep Puerto Rico. You understand? And the divide usually comes from the level of pride that you have. You see, because when you're born on the island, the pride is through the roof.